This is a way of kind of working with all these convolutions and all the idiosyncrasies of the individual interpretation of this. And that is to simply sit for a while, now or later, and consider your feelings from childhood about being rejected or abandoned, about being not seen and not heard. So you're going to need to do some thinking about this, because there's some apparent rejection and real rejection. It goes back and forth and back and forth. And then for each parent, take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, so you got 2 columns, and list the loving feelings for each parent, and list the anger, resentment, and disappointment in the other column for each parent. Okay? You can notice if you can't come up with these feelings, they may have been suppressed, which is why you can do this exercise once, let it go, and then do it again a few weeks later. And you may find that some more things surface. So in this kind of situation, you're not going to get all the information that you need the first go-round. Okay? It might take a few months or a few years even to bring up all the feelings. But you need to start. Some places is a good place to start. So again, take 2 pieces of paper and draw a line down the middle and have a piece of paper for each parent, and list your loving feelings on one side and your anger, resentment, and disappointment on the other. And once you've got a bit of a list, notice which parent you felt more rejected by. Okay? And then notice which parent you saw as stronger, superior, and therefore desirable. And by desirable, what I mean is you want to please that parent and you want their approval. Lecture goes into detail at one point about how when you're rejected, one of the responses you have is to try to turn that rejection around, so that you go after that parent and you want to please them even if they're wrong. Rejection's hard to take. So you want to notice which parent you see as stronger, superior, or desirable. And then you want to notice which parent you see as weaker, inferior, undesirable. Now, it's really hard in a teleconference to have different examples come up. But so I do tend to use some of my own. If you want to volunteer them, I'm happy to hear, but I'll volunteer one just to start. My father was in the military. He was an officer. And he was very, very tall, and he was very handsome, and he was a football captain when he was in college. So he was a socially, professionally, and physically admirable person. And I, of course, was very little, and I was a girl, and I was not born with the sense of self-discipline and perspective and all the wonderful qualities that made him a great officer I didn't have as a child. So I saw him as an immovable force, as once he made a decision, that was it. I did not know how to discuss or argue with him in a way that he could hear me. Okay? So I wound up fearing my father, not because he was fearful, he was a lovely man. Okay? But I didn't know how to deal with him. I did not know how to get through to this person. Pardon? That's all right. Okay, so I did not know how to access this person. I did not know how to have communication. He wasn't that good at talking to a 3 or 4-year-old. And so he would make a decision, and I saw it as an act of God. Okay? There's not much you can do when Pop makes a decision and that's the end of it. And in my mother's world, that was the end of it too. That's what your father wants to do, and that's what we're going to do. So I saw my father as God making decisions from on high in a way that I could not participate in, that I could not shift or move, okay? And from then on I had to live by that decision. And sometimes he made decisions that weren't in a 3 or 5-year-old's best interests, and my mother didn't see it as a problem, and that was the way it was. Okay? So as a child, I personally felt totally rejected by my father. I didn't feel seen. And when I would make arguments, they would be babbly little, but I don't like it arguments, which did not impress military officers. Okay? So I saw my father as rejecting of me. I was fearful of him for no reasons whatsoever. And so I saw my mother as more loving. But of course the approval I wanted was my father's. For 2 reasons. One, I wanted my father's approval, but secondly, I wanted some input, and I didn't know how to get it except to get in his good graces. And that was a battle that went on until I was an adult. Now, what the lecture talks about, and this is the next element of it, is that because my father was not an emotional person, because my father was not attuned to sensitivity of other people, because my father did not get emotionally involved with things the way I got involved, I felt that those were qualities in me that needed to be suppressed. And yet those were some of my more sterling qualities. Now this is where the whole lecture is coming to, and that's the purpose of the title, Shame of the Higher Self. And what I'm building here, upon personal example, is a place where, with no serious intention on the part of the players involved, I as a child decided that some of my best qualities were unacceptable and needed to be suppressed. And I did not wake up to that when I was 3.5 or 4. It took me many, many decades, because that kind of thinking process starts going underground. It just sinks into your unconscious, and you don't really get what you've done. Now, I'm listing a benign example because my father was a fairly good guy, and I've heard stories from clients about parents that had a bit more animosity or distortion, or where the situation was more painful or more serious, and that would exasperate the situation to a higher degree. Now, I hope that's making sense, but that's basically the nuts and bolts of Shame of the Higher Self. That this is how you can begin to reject elements of yourself for no other reason that in the household those qualities don't seem to be workable, they don't seem to have any power, or they are rejected, ignored, or disparaged.